So today I want to talk about this guy named Chris Hayes who works for MSNBC, and he's an idiot. He's a complete moron. He's a Jewish supremacist, and we're going to watch this video, and we're going to find out why that is.
People are eating cats.
And what if I told you that's like her pretty soft stuff? On social media, Wilson has been a big promoter of some downright ghastly racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Back in 2023, the head of the Anti-Defamation League tweeted a remembrance of Leo Frank. Frank was a Jewish businessman who was lynched by a mob in Georgia over a century ago for allegedly raping and murdering a child. It was
Okay, I want to say real quick, this guy that he's pointing out, Jonathan Greenblatt, he's a Jewish supremacist and a Zionist. This guy, Jonathan Greenblatt, has been going after pro-Palestinian people and calling them anti-Semitic and weaponizing Jewish identity in order to smear people who criticize Israel and the genocide that has been committing in Gaza. That's what the ADL really is. It is a Zionist organization working on behalf of the Israeli government.
An enormous deal. In fact, that case was what spurred the creation of the ADL. Well,
he's correct. The ADL was created to defend a Jew who raped and murdered a child.
Wilson responded by attacking the ADL and Frank with false claims. Quote,
they were not false claims.
Leo Frank raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl. He also tried to frame a black man for his crime.
Both of those statements are correct.
The ADL is despicable.
That is also correct.
As the ADL and others have pointed out, basically only like the hardest core anti-Semites and neo-Nazis believe Leo Frank was guilty.
Wrong. Wrong, fucking wrong. He's making an appeal to authority fallacy. Okay? Just because the ADL and other people, whoever these people are, said so, that doesn't make it true. In fact, what we have learned a lot is that the ADL, as I already pointed out, is just a Zionist organization.
It's a theory, if you want to call it that you only find in the darkest corners of the internet. But Wilson not only did it in that post, she did it again the following year in a separate post. Like this is a real cause celeb for her. She's also tweeted support for Germany's far-right extremist party AfD.
All right, so look, I don't know who this woman is, Kingsley Wilson. I've never heard of her before. I don't know anything about her. The only thing I want to talk about is these claims that Chris Hayes is making about Leo Frank and the ADL, and his Jewish supremacist remarks that the only people who believe that Leo Frank is guilty are anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists. Now, I'm willing to bet good money that this Chris Hayes moron, Jewish supremacist, has not researched this case at all, which is why his only proof that Leo Frank was innocent, quote unquote, is because the ADL said so. And the reason why the ADL believes that Leo Frank was innocent, the best evidence they have is because he was a Jew. And so therefore he must be innocent. And that is what all of these Leo Frank defenders, at the end of the day, that is the only reason why they believe he's innocent, is because he's a Jew, and they're Jewish supremacists themselves. So I made a whole video about this. So I'm not going to go over every single little detail, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the, I'll call them conspiracy theories to suggest that Leo Frank was innocent. These Leo Frank defenders, these Jewish supremacists, usually point to Jim Conley as being the guilty party. So look, if you want to know all the details about this case, watch my video right here about it. But I'm going to go over some of the counter objections real quick. So Jim Conley, in order to understand this, you need to understand who Jim Conley actually was. Jim Conley was Leo Frank's right-hand man. Okay, this is Leo Frank. This man was actually Leo Frank's fixer. He was being paid more than anyone at the factory that both of them worked at, and that was the factory that Leo Frank was the director of. People want to say Jews were so oppressed at this time. Guess what? Leo Frank was the director of this factory, and during the trial, he had 8 lawyers. 8. um, so what? So Jim Connolly was being paid more than anyone else at this factory, and this is extremely unusual because he was a custodian there, a floor sweeper, and this was during Jim Crow South, okay, in the early 1900s, and yet this black man was being paid more than anyone else there. Well, why is that? Well, it's because his real job was not to be a custodian. It was to set Leo Frank up with women to have sex with in his office, which was on the second floor of that factory that they worked on. Now, the only thing on that second floor was Jim Conley's office. That's it. The second floor. So this is the second floor here. This is the first floor, and then this is the basement. The only thing on the second floor was Jim Conley's office and Mary Fagan, the victim. And she worked across the hall from Leo Frank's office, which was on the second floor. And guess what? The murder happened on the second floor. And we know that this is true because Mary Fagan's hair and her blood was found on pieces of equipment on the second floor. So it's believed that after Leo Frank murdered Mary Fagan, Jim Conley moved her body to the basement. So he was helping Leo Frank. There's no question about that. Jim Conley aided and abetted the murder of Mary Fagan. That is true. However, he did not do the rape or the murder. Leo Frank did. Okay? And since we know for a fact that the murder happened on the second floor because her hair and her blood was found there on equipment, then that proves that Leo Frank was the only one who could have done this. Okay? You think Jim Conley would have raped and murdered Mary Fagan in Leo Frank's office when he could have walked in at any time? No, I don't think so. That's idiotic. Now, Jim Conley did write the forged death note, which tried to implicate another black man. Yeah, there was here it is, the forged death note. He did forge this because Leo Frank told him to write this. And it was trying to implicate another black man named Newt Lee. And this also proves that Jim Conley didn't do it because there's no way he would have concocted this elaborate plot to implicate another black man. Why would a black man implicate another black man? He could accidentally implicate himself. So that's moronic. No, Leo Frank put him up to it. He wanted him to do it. And then the other piece of evidence was they actually planted evidence at that other guy's house, Newt Lee's house, to implicate him in the murder. And the only one who could have pulled off that caper was Leo Frank. He was the only one. He was wealthy. He was rich. Like I said before, it's a misconception that Jews were severely oppressed during this time. He obviously wasn't. Leo Frank was a Jew, but people didn't know that he was Jewish until after he raped and murdered a child and then was put on trial for it. Then his Jewish identity came out, not before. He was wealthy. He was the director of a factory. He was not oppressed. He had 8 lawyers during this trial. He had the money and the resources to get someone to plant that fake evidence at Newt Lee's house to implicate him. People try to say that, well, Jim Conley is guilty because he changed his story. Jewish supremacists try to say that. They try to say, since he changed his story, because originally he was trying to implicate Newt Lee, And then he changed the story and implicated Leo Frank. Well, guess what? That was according to the plan. Like I said, Jim Conley was an accomplice to murder. He helped Leo Frank do it. And he was sent to prison for this, by the way. So the original plan was to blame Newt Lee for the murder, to implicate Newt Lee for the murder, another black man. But when it became clear that that plan was falling apart, Leo Frank threw Jim Conley under the bus to save his own ass. And then that's when Jim Conley abandoned Leo Frank and said, "Fuck you, I'm telling the truth. I'm going to come out and say what really happened." And it is true. Jim Conley did help Leo Frank try to cover up the murder. He helped him do it. That was his job. He's a piece of shit, but he was not the rapist and he was not the murderer. And for Chris Hayes to advance these lies and to say that only anti-Semitic neo-Nazis, wherever the hell he said, believe that Leo Frank was guilty, is a Jewish supremacist canard. You are literally advancing the agenda of a Jewish supremacist organization, the ADL. Why do you think the ADL is called the Anti-Defamation League? It's because they believe that ever accusing a Jew of rape or murder, even when they are guilty, is defamation. That's the reason. And that's the reason why we're done with these lies, with these Jewish supremacists on both sides. Because MSNBC is a liberal organization. You know, it's not just the Republicans, it's not just Fox News. No, it's people on the left. It's liberals who are advancing these Jewish supremacist lies in order to benefit Jewish supremacy and Israel. And we're done. We're done with that nonsense once and for all.